Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paverart. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile. In this episode, we cover the critical role of your spouse in the startup of your business and their importance to you in and out of the business. Now, I think we could all agree that communication and consultation are probably the number one characteristics that you need to carry with you every day. But support, patience, trust and respect, equality, and teamwork can be just as important. And always remember this: whether it's in or out of your business, you're always going to be partners. Now, we hope you take at least one idea away with you from this episode. And if you're up for it, give us some feedback. We would welcome that too. Why don't we start with you? And why don't we talk a bit about the influence and the necessity that's created by a spouse being not just involved with the business, but having to handle all those other ancillary situations outside of the business, like family. Like family. That's pretty much a big chunk of it.
Right. So I met Kim at Kraft Foods, which is 20 plus years ago. We both worked at Kraft. We met each other there. She was in a customer service position. She transitioned to sales, and I was working at Kraft. So we met each other, and then 6 months after we met each other, I moved to another company, which was a little bit better versus having a relationship with somebody at the same company. But we both met at Kraft. So she's got a similar background to my career. She spent a good 10 years at Kraft, and I spent a decade plus in the consumer products industry as well. So she had a core understanding of that. I think that really does help. If you have a spouse that can relate to the business that you're in, that you're working in, I think it helps tremendously, personally.
Sure. Absolutely.
Since then, throughout, I guess you could say, my stint at Monogram Foods, which was 2006 to 2014, I started getting her involved in every business that I've been in. Not in a major way, but at Monogram Foods, she managed and helped launch our social media efforts. At LM Foods, a company I acquired in 2014, she did a lot of sales and marketing support. And at Paverart, she runs our books. She does our bookkeeping, and she does some social media stuff. She's kind of a catch-all. So I would say she's intimately involved in what we do, which I think does help. To have a spouse that understands what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, I really do think it helps just from that function. So that's a high level. We can get more into the role, how we kind of manage the relationship. Curious on you with Bev. How did you meet Bev?
Well, I met her at a company picnic of all places. And when we first met, it was through her brother that he actually came in. He was hired by me to take my place as quality control manager for a company in Christiana, Delaware. And I just from talking to him every day and being around him every day, I found out that he had a couple of sisters, and I saw a picture of Beverly, and we had this company picnic coming up, and he said, well, you know what? Why don't I ask Bev to come to the picnic? Because she lives with my girlfriend. So she came, showed up, and that's how we met. At the time, she was a medical transcriber for the Delaware Division Hospital in Wilmington, Delaware. And it just basically progressed from there. Shortly after we got married, we were living in an apartment. We had our first child, our son Kyle, and I was just starting to get on the road, be an outside salesperson. I had a 3-state territory. So she kept her job. She started working nights so she could, I'd be home when I could be.
How many years you've been married to Bev?
It'll be 41 in August.
So 41 years. So you're going back 41 years at the start of your career, right?
Exactly. But the sacrifices she had to make in regards to my job at the time was the fact that I was on the road. And when you're on the road and you've got a couple of kids, my son Kyle, my daughter Laura Jean, the impact on her, in addition to not just working full time, was to take care of the family. She raised those kids.
So can you paint that picture a little bit? When you're on the road, so you're in a sales role, right?
Oh yeah.
So what does being on the road mean?
Being on the road means that you're basically running your own little business. You've got your own little territory, and you're responsible for, increasing sales in that territory. Bottom line, performance is absolutely critical. And I was a young guy, but what that means is you're away from home a good bit. When you're lucky enough to be working the sales territory in your own backyard, you can be home every night.
So one night, overnight trips, or?
When you start getting more than, 65, 70, 75 miles away from your house, then it's more effective to do it overnight, to do overnights. And then I would do them a week at a time, generally. But the things, as I got, as the territory started to grow, I got a little notoriety within the company, blah, blah, blah. I got promoted, became sales manager, became VP of sales and marketing. It's amazing, as you go up, things don't get easier. They get more complex, and they get more involved. And the company grew. It grew quite a bit, actually, from the first day I was there. But
how old were your kids when you got promoted to VP of sales and marketing? How old were your kids?
Oh, let's see. My son would have been 14. He would have been 14. My daughter would have been 12.
Got it. Pre-Paverart, you're managing Bolt Inc. You're doing the bills, the investment, all of that, and she was not involved, or no knowledge of it, or?
She was slightly involved. She had knowledge of it, but she was slightly involved. But I took responsibility for doing all that work, doing all the financial work for the family. And it was, it was easy. It wasn't that big of a problem.
Sure.
But it's the responsibilities and the amount of time that starting a company from absolute scratch takes. And you've got that, and you've got a son who's a freshman in college, a daughter who's a junior in high school, and you've got bills to pay and responsibilities to meet in regards to your family, financing or financial responsibilities too. It's the stress levels were pretty high, but to her credit, she said, "You know what? This is something that you want to do. Go do it, and I'll do everything to support it."
So you had two asks of Bev. One was your compensation is going down, and then the other one is you want her to take on more of the family responsibility in terms of some of the things that you were managing, so you can focus kind of hardcore on Paverart, the launch of Paverart, right?
It's absolutely correct. When you look at the sacrifices that our spouses had to make, while we were doing what we had to do here at Paverart, it couldn't have been done. There's just no way. There's no way this couldn't have been done. And let's not just talk about the hardcore everyday, day-to-day, get the kids off to school, make sure they get picked up, there's also the emotional support. And believe me, I know I needed it. It's, you want that, that regular, hey, how's it going? You're doing a good job. Keep it up, blah, blah, blah. And my wife was terrific when it came to that also. So, she deserves a lot of credit. I mean, and how about you? Now, although Bev was not, intimately involved with the work here at Paverart, your wife seems to have always been intimately involved with whatever business propositions and things that you were involved with. I mean, speak to that. I think that's important.
Well, Kim, like I said, she had a similar background. She knew what a food company was. She worked at Kraft. Kraft transferred her 2 or 3 different times to go follow her husband, who, by the way, worked at a competitor. So obviously Kraft felt strongly that Kim was a good asset. They wanted to keep her and help her move
Sure.
and kind of follow my career. The big opportunity, though, or the big real test of our spousal relationship as it relates to business and owning a business and leading businesses, came when I had an opportunity to leave a great job in Memphis, Tennessee, where we built a great life for ourselves. We were there for 8.5 years. I had an opportunity to acquire a company. I was approached by a private equity group. Had a chance to move back to New Jersey, which is where I'm born and raised, and pull together a group of investors. And it was scary as hell. I mean, I was 39, about to turn 40. And it required me signing a personal guarantee of over $10 million. So a personal guarantee means should the business fail, they're going to come after all the assets of the business to recoup their investment. And then if there's anything left over, they're going to come after me. So I can assure you I wasn't worth anywhere near $10 million. So that's a pretty daunting proposition. And for an analytical guy like me, who's now turning 40 years old, acquired a little bit of wealth just from pure saving and investing.
Sure.
Looking at losing everything, I was in analysis paralysis mode for maybe 6 weeks studying. How do you stomach that?
I know you talked to Kim about this. What was Kim's response when you came to her that day and said, "Look, here's the opportunity, but here's what we have to do." And it's the we, not I. That's the important part. How did that conversation go?
Well, the multifaceted. So number one, Memphis, Tennessee, and New Jersey couldn't be further apart from each other, just from, cost of living, right? So
sure. Cultural.
Cultural, cost of living. The food stinks in Memphis, but the barbecue's good, but there's no good Italian food. But that's a story for another day. You're basically down anytime you live in a Memphis, Tennessee, a Cincinnati, Ohio, and you're going to a New York City or a New Jersey or California,
sure.
Basically, unless your pay is quadrupling, you're going to downsize dramatically. So there's that whole, I'm living in this size house. Now I got to go down to a house that might be a quarter of what I was living in. So there's a lifestyle adjustment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one component. That doesn't dictate it, but that is part of the mix. How are you going to adjust to a new life? The big thing, though, is forget about the house size. How do you stomach, if things go south, the risk and going personally bankrupt at the age of 40 to 45, somewhere like that? Without Kim, she basically said after about 4 weeks of watching me obsess over spreadsheets and what do you do?
Which is, by the way, for the audience, that's exactly what you do.
Right.
You obsess.
Yeah, so I obsess. At some point I make a decision, but
that's right.
It doesn't take me long to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
This was the exception. I'm going through analysis paralysis for 4 weeks trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And there was no figuring it out. You're either going to go, but you got to be comfortable with that risk of saying, if it goes south, I'm going personally bankrupt. Kim finally goes to me and said, "Look, what is the worst that happens?" Well, bankruptcy. We get wiped out. Everything that we've built for 20 years gets wiped out down to zero. She said, "But you think you'll be able to get a CMO job," which is what I was in, or a high-level executive job? I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, how long will it take you to make it back?" So it was kind of like that light bulb moment that says, all right, if we got wiped out, you go get a job, no longer an owner of a business, but you get a job, and you start compiling wealth and all the things that you got to do. Now, is that a guarantee that I can get a job? No, but you got to think that, all right, so I have a business that's failed. Wouldn't be the first time a business owner has failed. But then she kind of like the light bulb went off. All right, if she's comfortable with that risk, us getting wiped out and me going to get a job, then what the hell am I doing? I mean, so I should take a cue from Kim, which is what I did. 90 days later, we closed on the business. So,
wow. I'll tell you what, that kind of emotional support, neither one of us go anywhere without that. That's pretty gutsy on her part to say that. Well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, we're going to lose everything. Well, that is the worst that can happen.
Right.
That's unbelievable. Absolutely.
Well, I think one of the lessons here is family in the context of running a career. And there's a lot of dual career households, right? So Bev wasn't sitting at home doing nothing. She was running a demanding career as well. And I believe she was getting her master's at some point during all this, wasn't she?
In the midst of all of this, she was going after her bachelor's. And then after she got her bachelor's, she decided she wanted to go after her master's. And I look, that in and of itself to me is,
Amazing.
I can't tell you, I can't explain how she pulled that off. I mean, with all the family responsibilities, me not being there a lot, and and then she decides, well, you know what, I can't be a nurse forever. I've got to get into another field that's less strenuous, because as you get older, nursing's very hard. It's a very, very difficult, physically demanding type of job, mentally demanding type of job. And it's just really tough.
Let me go back to when you were talking about the idea of Paverart. You didn't make that decision on a Friday, give 4 weeks notice and start Paverart 4 weeks. Didn't you have like a year or a year and a half of planning where you and Mick worked together?
Well, when my brother approached me about handling the sales and marketing end of the business, and then he told me what the concept was, and then I met with both him and Mick, I had to make some sort of decision, but at the same time, I had a great job. Financially speaking, it was a good job too. And, I had to tell Bev, I said, look, I'm kind of looking into this, and it's going to give me the opportunity. If this thing looks like it's going to work out, it's going to give me the opportunity to work with my brother, which I always really kind of wanted to do. And also kind of strike out on my own, albeit with two other gentlemen who are just two terrific guys to work with. And, but at any rate, make a long story short, for about a year and a half prior to all three of us pulling the trigger to start this thing, I had to learn about pavers. And what's the worst that happened? What's the worst that could happen? I come out of this knowing quite a bit about concrete pavers, what they're all about, who the manufacturers are, what's the market like. The worst that could happen is that, okay, I know that, and if we didn't start the business, I would have learned all these things. Worst case scenario, I become the person in my neighborhood that knows more about concrete pavers than anybody else.
Right. Not a lot of downside there. You were investing time.
Exactly. So, but there's that, if you've got any conscience at all, you've got to know that, look, I love my previous job. I like doing what I was doing. I like the people that I worked with. I mean, I worked with some really, really talented people that I learned a lot from, not the least of which were my father and Jim Tate. And I've spoken about Jim Tate in the previous podcast. Several of the salespeople that worked for me, and I was on, I would go on the road with for a week at a time. Some of these guys were just really, really good at what they did. And I learned my craft even better from working with them. So there's that, there was that push and tug and pull. But when the time came and I said, you know what, I the other two guys want to do this, I want to do it too. We made the commitment and I pulled the trigger on my 50th.
And you all took a risk. The risk that you all took is that you were all gainfully employed in different endeavors, and you're going to go to something with zero revenue.
Yeah, but you go back to what Kim said, and this is, look, I'm managing risk is pretty much what life is all about, and knowing how to manage it and knowing how to, do cost benefit analyses and weigh the good with the bad. And at some point you still have to pull the trigger. But my position was this: worst case scenario, if Paverart failed for whatever reason, I know I can get a job. I'm still a relatively young man. Back then 50 wasn't, 50 wasn't the new 30, but I knew I could probably land a job someplace else if I needed to. I may even been able to go back to my previous employer, or I could have gotten a job in the concrete paver industry, based on all the contacts that I made and the fact that, you're on the road. There's no better teacher than being on the road by yourself, talking to clients, getting in front of people every day, getting exposed to issues, problems, needs, all those things. You learn from that whole experience. But that that was, I'm a big believer in fallback positions. This is not a pull the trigger and you're on a tightrope with no with no net underneath. No way. And let's go back to Kim again. You became successful at L&M Foods. I mean, that whole venture became successful, very, very successful. What's that conversation like when you come to her and you sit down one night and say, look, I'm going to go meet with the two owners of this little company called Paverart. They're putting the business up for sale, and and she's asking you questions. Well, tell me, what's it all about? Well, they make designs in concrete pavers. Oh, okay. What's a concrete paver? And why are they making designs? I'd love to know what that conversation was all about, because quite frankly, she's got to look at you. You're growing and improving a multi-million-dollar company. Okay. And then you're also working, you come from the world of working for working the largest, food processor / producer in the world. And here you're coming to Paverart with 3 guys at the time, not anymore, but 3 guys at the time. And, dirty office, dirty shop, that conversation. Talk a little bit about that conversation with Kim.
Well, yeah, I think I hate to make this mechanical, but if you know the skill set and experience of your spouse, and you start to develop a filter. I have a trigger mechanism that when Kim sees something for the first time, pay close attention to what the reaction is. And if it's like, that's pretty cool, my eyes go wide open, because she's got a pretty discriminating filter, at least on the first. She's got a pretty good sniffer, if you will. The first thing about L&M Foods, the opportunity is it's surimi seafood. And we both had, what the hell is surimi seafood? Never heard of it. Had no experience in the category. So that was like the first thing. Is like, oh shit, it's an opportunity, but we don't know what the hell this is. So, and then now you get this thing, Paverart, hardscaping. What the hell is hardscaping? Never heard of that. All right.
Sure.
It's not complicated, but you got to kind of learn it. But Kim, she looks at the website. She goes, wow, this is pretty cool. And then she had an interesting comment. She said something like, geez, we just did our backyard, our patio, a retaining wall, a fire pit. I think it was 4 years prior. Why didn't our contractor recommend this to us? Light bulb goes off. I don't know, but we're going to find out.
Sure.
What is the awareness? But her first reaction was Paverart. Wow, this stuff's pretty cool. Number one, first reaction. Number two, why didn't our contractor recommend it? And in my mind, I'm thinking he probably didn't know about it, right?
Exactly.
Or he knew about it and he was just lazy or didn't want to upsell. I don't know what the reason is, but those two things right there, I learned now over time, her instincts on the L&M Foods getting over that hump of risk, she was right. And then the Paverart reaction, maybe she was right again here, and that's where the opportunity could be.
Sure.
So anyway, so that was part of it. As it relates to, I think having a spouse in the family union, understand what the maximum downside is if it doesn't go well. What does life look like? And to be comfortable with that. I think that's a conversation that's got to be had. You also have to have the opportunity or the discussion around what's the max opportunity. What does upside look like, right? So you got to go through both of them and have everybody on board. Now, your point on L&M Foods being successful and doing a good job, all of those things, doing right for investors, paying off debt, doing great for the employees, all those, we had a lot of good positive outcomes. That doesn't happen by working 9 to 5, right? So
yeah,
hustle or bust. I mean, we'll go back to the name. And let's talk about that for the family. And I'll give you some, the biggest mistake I've made as an investor in outside businesses, I think I'm a pretty good operator, maybe even above average, right? I'm a horrible investor in terms of evaluating. I can read a balance sheet and an income statement as good as somebody else and understand product. But I've made some near fatal mistakes on investing. I'll give you one example as it relates to family. I will never, after making a few mistakes, invest in a owner-operator team that happens to be a husband and wife. Now, keep in mind off to here, Kim and I are highly involved in Paverart, so just a little hypocritical. But guess what? We don't have any outside investors. So I've invested in an owner-operator, husband and wife team, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, when they've got young kids, I think the kids' age is important. If they've got young kids and the owner operator is husband and wife,
Right.
you've got to ask yourself, who's the parent? Tough question.
Exactly.
So if little Johnny's got, and little Johnny, let's say, is 10 years old, and he's got a football game or a baseball game, and it's at 3:30, are they both going? And that answer is yes. I will never invest in a company like that. Now, here's a black and white thing. LM Foods or Paverart, look, we were starting at 5:30 a.m. We were doing overnight shifts.
Sure.
If Dominic, and he's not in sports, but guess what? If he's in Little League and he's got a 4 o'clock game and I've got to run a second shift or oversee something because there's risk involved, ain't going to that game. So this sounds harsh, but if you've got an owner operator, husband and wife team with young kids, those kids are in sports, and both of those people want to be balanced parents and attend and all of that, no problem with that. They better own 100% of the business and not be responsible for investors. I made the mistake of having invested in a company that has multiple investors. There's no debt because the company's not making money. There's no downside to the owners. They're not guaranteeing debt. And they've got young kids and they both want to be parents. Big problem. Big, fatal mistake. So in the context of family and how do you manage all of this, running a business, whether you're the general manager or owning a business, it's all consuming. So, I'm fascinated by, you being on the road, and a sales gig is very, very representative of what a owner is like. You're on the road and you're all consumed with that. Now, you might only be selling for 6 hours, but you're working around the clock because you're away from your family and everybody's sacrificing in that endeavor. But these are kind of black and white things. If your family's not on board with little Johnny's got the football game and you can't make it because you got something pulling you, they got to kind of be on board. They can't hold resentment on that, or something's got to give. Now, if you've got investors, you've got even more of an obligation. Now, if you own 100% of the company and you don't have outside forces or debt, then you can make whatever decision you want. That's part of the freedom that you have with owning a business.
Exactly.
So capital structure, I think, is important. If you've got other interests, you've got a fiduciary responsibility to those investors. That's just now, not everyone takes it that way, by the way. But I've made some mistakes with understanding cap tables and the role of family and not evaluating it through the right lens.
It's I don't know. There's a complex set of mental gymnastics that you go through where you're weighing, okay, I've got to get this done. This has to be done today. Well, the problem with that is you're doing that every day, like every 15 minutes when you're in this situation. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Every once in a while, you just have to say, okay, I'm putting this aside. It's just going to have to get done some other time. I need to go home and spend some time with my kids. I need to go to this swim meet. Okay. I need to, give my wife some time. We need a date night. We need something. Okay. You're right. It's all consuming, and it's very easy to get really, really caught up in it so much that, but here's what I found too. When you have successes, you need to have somebody to celebrate the successes with. As much as I love my brother, and as much as I love Mick, they're celebrating the successes with them. We were all successful, whatever happened here. It was a result of all three of us doing what we had to do. But you like to share that with somebody outside of the business.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. I am a big believer.
You got to get that little, you got to get that little injection of, hey, great job, hon. And that's, I could always count on my wife for that. And she was always very supportive when it came to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And look, tough, very tough what she had to do. I'm not, and it wasn't all peaches and cream. It's not every day. Well, how was your day, dear? No, that's not how Mike and Bev work.
Right.
It is now. It's interesting, but it is now. But back then it was, you're just, she's going to work. She's going for her master's. She's taking care of the kids. It's taking up 100% of her waking hours. just like Paverart was in some way, shape, or form taking up 100% of our waking hours.
Yeah.
And
I think if you're a business owner, I believe this is, because I already gave my bias on if I'm an investor looking to invest in this company, and I see husband and wife team with outside investors, and they're both trying to manage the parenting thing, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah.
Now let's step back and say husband and wife team, they own 100% of the company, so they can do whatever the hell they want. They're not screwing up somebody else's investment, right?
It's true. Yeah.
I am a huge believer in a small business owner. Let's just say the husband is a key operator, a key, like I am with Paverart. I'm a key part of the team. Have the spouse do something in that business. They don't got to work 40 hours a week. They don't have to work 80 hours a week, but give them a meaningful, relevant role. So Kim does our bookkeeping. So she knows all the cash that comes in, all the cash that goes out, and she can see when we're struggling and when we're not. And she'll make empathy is one thing, being able to walk in someone else's shoes. How do you get empathy if you're a spouse and your husband or your wife is a small business owner operator?
Sure.
That's hard to do. Give them a role that's meaningful. It could be social media. It could be bookkeeping's a great one. Now, Kim had no bookkeeping experience, by the way. She never knew QuickBooks. I mean, she had some way back in the day. And she had to learn it. So she paid like $700 to have a CPA kind of show her the ropes, and she learned more on her own. But she kind of self-taught herself QuickBooks, how to reconcile every month, how to run the basic reports, vendor payments. If we'd miss a bill, we'd send the vendors over to Kim, and she'd feel the heat of, oh my God, I missed a bill, and she'd have to go manage those relationships. So having a spouse that's involved in some aspect is a great way to build a little empathy within the family unit and family relationship.
Isn't that interesting? When you look at the four of us, and when I say the four of us, I'm thinking of you, Mick, Ken, myself. Every one of our wives got intimately involved with the financial end of our home.
That's right.
Finances. And Bev and I affectionately call it Bull Incorporated. And, we're 50-50 partners, but she took that and ran with it. And what the beauty of that is, and I can't speak for my friends and their wives and all that. I can't speak for them at all. But what I do know is this: in the event of my demise, if something happens to me, I'm no longer here, I become incapacitated, I don't have to worry about what's going to happen with the family finances. I know my wife probably knows more about them now than I do. And
you're exactly, when you did the Bull Inc., when Bev, 3 years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago, I gave complete control and management of our personal finances and investments and rent payments for investment properties. I gave it all over to Kim. Best decision I ever made. I mean,
absolutely.
And we don't have a massive portfolio, but we got enough complexity with rental properties and real estate, and what a pain in the ass that could be. Gave it all to Kim, and now she manages it. She does the insurance payments. She pays the state tax for Indiana for properties we got there.
Sure.
Manages those really. Best decision I ever made in the context of running a small business. Give our personal household responsibility to Kim. By far, that's the best decision I ever made.
Yeah. And
now she might not think so, because now she's got to do all that responsibility, but talk about an enormous weight off my shoulders. And it sounds like for you too.
I didn't want to have to worry about that. And at the time, my kids I had one that was getting ready to go into college and one that was already in college. And, you and I've talked about how we paid for college. We cobbled together this complex plan of, financing and personal financing and scholarships and all that stuff. So that our kids, and by the way, it always comes back to brick by brick, doesn't it?
It does.
Brick by brick apprenticeship. And, but it always comes back to the, I didn't want to have college debt hanging over my head, for the next 30 years after my kids got out of school. So, we were going to have that. And Bev was, she dug in and took total responsibility for that and did a tremendous job. And it's amazing. You come out the other side of that, you put Paverart aside for the moment, you put L&M Foods aside for the moment, and you just look back at what they did and how they pulled that off. It's amazing that we came out the other side of this, debt-free, great shape. I mean, it just,
It's a big accomplishment.
it gave me the opportunity, to be a worrywart about Paverart,
Right.
okay, every day. And, she knew enough, how many sleepless nights were there, Mark? I mean, come on.
Right.
There's, you get 2 hours of sleep, you wake up, oh, I forgot to do this, or I've got to do that. I'm leaving. Why are you going in? Why are you going in? So I've got stuff I got to get done and I need to get it done now. And 12, 13, 14 hours later, you come home and, you're exhausted and, magically there's something to eat on the table for you. Okay. And, oh, by the way, all the bills got paid, it's not just paying bills. It's the financing. It's the, it's handling loans, handling investments and things of that nature. All I can say is thank God for my wife.
Well, yeah, same here. I think and by the way, I'm the furthest thing you're going to find to a work-life balance person. So I am not going to, I don't believe in the myth of, which I think is a myth, of being a business owner and having supreme work-life balance. Now there's some out there, but I'm not that guy that can espouse advice on that. I've always been hard. Look, the name Hustle or Bust tells you all you need to know. So I've always been the first person at the job, hour before somebody else, waking up at 4 a.m., doing my hour walk, physical fitness, all of that, as much as I can to try and manage the stress. But here, in the context of family and business, here's probably the number one thing you can do: run a successful business. As a business owner, know what it takes, or know what your key metrics are, to know that your business is just a little healthier this month than they were this month last year. What are those things? Is it cash in the bank? Is it bookings? Is it revenue? Is it proposals? What are those things that that if you're going to have a Friday night dinner with the family, is your business a few steps ahead of where they were same time last year or last month? Are you moving in the right direction? If that answer is yes, because you're managing the business and you know what those key vital signs are, so to speak. Sure. Isn't that Friday night pizza just a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit less stressful? You're happy around your family. You don't have something. There's not something over here that's, I got to go in tomorrow. I've got to get this done. Blah blah blah. It's just so much more relaxing when you have that. Right. You're 100% correct. I think you really do owe that knowledge and the vital health of your business. You owe that to your family. Now, as the business owner, you've got fiduciary. Let's say you've got zero debt, zero investors, and you're an owner operator. You own 100% of the business. Great spot to be in. And you're trying to build a growth business, which is what people that would listen to Hustle or Bust, they're kind of into that, right? Sure. Your number one fiduciary responsibility then, obviously your family's important, but it's your employees. You've got a responsibility to make payroll and take that risk, that issue off the table. If people are worried that they're going to get paid, they're not well capitalized, at least to last the next 3 months, they're going to leave you, or they should leave you. You've got to take all of those risks out off the table, so to speak. And then it becomes for employees, do they believe in where the business is going? Do they see you buying new equipment? Do they see you trying to share some of the excess profits, whether that's bonuses or a little bit of raise every now and then? If the employees, they're gonna take what you say as pretty important. They're gonna make sure that you do what you say, but they're gonna follow your actions a little bit more to see if you're for real and to see if the business, do they have faith in you as a leader? If all of those things, if you get your employees and your teamwork built, everything related to the family becomes a little bit easier. There's nothing that can help with stress more than a successful business. How you get there, I think, is you can write books on that. Everyone does write books on that. Look, I think it's, as a business owner, the other thing you got to know, other than your own family, it's, the payroll feeds a lot of mouths. It's not just the person getting the paycheck. Yeah. It's their family, right? Yeah, exactly. So having some spouses, they have spouses too, by the way. Right. So having knowledge of, we generally have a good feel for the family structure. Now we're small. We can do that. We know John's family, Brian's family, and Nick's girlfriend. And we know the peripheral situation with our other employees. I think that's important. Now, we don't need to go meet them. We don't need to interview them. They don't need to interview us, but we got to have an idea what's going on in their life, what their struggles are, because their families and their support of their life here at Paverart or whatever business people are involved in, that's important too. I mean, now some people will, they'll build a Chinese firewall up and then say your personal life is your personal life. Kind of naive. Yeah. If you got problems at home, let's say you're a entry-level employee working for us, if you got massive problems at home, it can become our problem whether we like it or not. So we can put our head in the sand, or we can deal with it.
At some point, exactly right.
So I think that's part of it. Is family is not just the general manager, it's not just the owner, it's everybody involved. What is that family situation? And those stresses, those problems, they're going to come into the business whether you like it or not. That doesn't mean you have to become a full-time shrink. It doesn't mean you got to know every little issue, but you got to be, at least you got to have a level of awareness to be able to run a business that the family thing cuts through everybody. There is no, I've never, I've been working since I've been 13 years old. I've yet to find the person that can leave it at the door. And at some point, it always bleeds in. I mean, I just haven't seen it. Girlfriend in a fight with a girlfriend, that's going to be a bad day of productivity, right?
That's
Running
right.
up your credit card bill, that's going to become your problem.
I'm laughing, but it's not funny. I agree.
It's going to
with you
become
100%.
your problem. So the family thing is going to cut through all the business, whether it's, we're talking in the context of how do we manage it? How did our spouses help us? Or what were the challenges? It's really the entire workforce family that's going to come in. And, I've got no magic bullet for it other than putting your head in the sand and ignoring it and expecting 9 to 5 to be clean about work. Pretty naive.
I guess I would wrap this up by saying we couldn't have done it without our wives. Period. End of story. There's no other better way to put it. And I think Kenny would say the same thing. And if Mick were with us, I'm sure he would say the same thing too. So
yeah, there's no doubt. The founding of any company is go find a spouse. They were a big part of it. They might not have been an equity contributor working in the business, but they are massively important to the health of any launch of any business, for any career for that matter. The spouse behind the scenes is a massive contributor.
Well, they would, but I would have to correct you. They are equity there are equity participants. There are equity participants in Olivito Incorporated and Bull Corporation. So,
Exactly right.
Well, I guess we wrap it up here, and we'll see you all. At a future date. If you like what you see, please indicate that. We like some feedback. We're on all the major podcast networks, including we're also on YouTube. Where else are we, Mark, besides YouTube? We're
on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts. We should show up. Type in Hustle or Bust, powered by Paverart.